At 400 feet above the Assam jungle, First Lieutenant Jack Morrison hung upside down in his burning P-40 Warhawk. Blood rushed to his head with crushing pressure. Vision faded to red at the edges. Carbon monoxide poisoning shut down his brain 1 second at a time. The runway stretched ahead 200 yards of salvation he might never reach. He had perhaps 20 seconds of consciousness remaining. The searing metal smell of burning coolant mixed with hot oil invaded every breath. His harness straps cut into his shoulders with 200 pounds of inverted pressure. Every inhale tasted like battery acid. Every exhale came harder than the last. 12 minutes earlier, Jack Morrison had faced an impossible choice. Watch 64 Japanese aircraft destroy his base and everyone in it, or attack alone with odds no pilot had ever survived. He chose to fight. And now, after defying every law of aerodynamics and surviving what should have killed him 6 different times, he was about to die 200 yards from safety because his own men thought he was the enemy. Down below, Technical Sergeant Frank Weber had his finger on the trigger of a .50 caliber machine gun, aimed directly at the inverted smoking P-40 approaching the runway. In 3 seconds, Weber would have to decide: shoot down what looked like an enemy aircraft or hold fire and hope he was not making the biggest mistake of his life. The image froze. Jack Morrison inverted in his cockpit, Weber at the gun position, both men suspended in that moment between life and death. Let's go back to where this impossible day began. 12 minutes before Jack Morrison turned his burning fighter into a flying coffin, he was just another pilot drinking bad coffee at 600 hours, trying not to think about the letter in his pocket. First Lieutenant Jack Morrison, 23 years old, 89th Fighter Squadron, Chabua Airfield, Assam, India, 43 combat missions protecting the Hump airlift, 172 flight hours in combat, 0 confirmed kills because his job was not glory. His job was getting transport planes through alive. The pre-dawn air in Assam smelled like aviation fuel mixed with monsoon mud and the distant smoke of cooking fires. Jack walked the flight line. Boot heels clicked on concrete still wet with morning dew. His flight jacket hung heavy with the weight of 2 letters in the inside pocket, worn leather that creaked with every movement. One letter from his wife Eleanor, dated November 18th. He had read it 14 times in 3 weeks. Catherine took her first steps yesterday. She walked toward your photograph, then fell into my arms laughing. She asks about Dada every night. I tell her you're protecting people, that you'll come home when the job is done. But Jack, I need you to come home. Not as a hero, just come home. The other letter kept him awake most nights, from Mrs. Patricia Brennan of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her son Dave had been Jack's best friend. Dave had burned to death in his P-40 3 weeks ago, November 19th, after engaging 8 Japanese fighters alone to protect a supply convoy. Mrs. Brennan's letter asked one question Jack had not been able to answer. Was he in pain? Did he say anything I need to know? My boy didn't die alone and afraid. Jack knew exactly what Dave had said in those final 40 seconds before the flames took him. But some truths were too terrible to write down. The screaming, the desperate attempts to open a jammed canopy, the radio transmission that ended in silence. What Jack did not know as he walked toward his P-40 that morning, mentally preparing for another routine patrol, was that in exactly 2 hours and 57 minutes, he would face the same choice Dave had faced. And his answer would push the boundaries of what any pilot thought was possible. To understand why Jack Morrison chose to die that day, you need to understand Dave Brennan, David Michael Brennan, 24 years old, red hair, freckles, laugh that could fill a barracks. Pittsburgh native who had never seen real mountains until he shipped to India. Co-pilot on Jack's first 17 missions. The kind of friend who would give you his last cigarette even though he did not smoke. 3 weeks before he died, Dave and Jack sat on the wing of their P-40 watching the sun set over the Himalayas. Dave was carving his daughter's name into a piece of scrap aluminum. Beth, 4 years old, waiting in Pittsburgh with her mother. Promise me something, David said. If something happens to me, don't wait for backup if people need help. These transport boys, they're counting on us. Promise me you'll fight. Jack had promised. 43 seconds. That's how long Dave screamed over the radio before his P-40 hit the ground at 380 miles per hour and turned into a fireball visible for 12 miles. Jack had been too far away to help, close enough to hear every second. That sound lived in his head, now playing on repeat every night when he tried to sleep. December 13th, 800 hours. Operations Tent. Major Thomas Hartley briefed the morning mission with the enthusiasm of a man describing laundry duty. Morrison, you're up first. Dawn patrol over Dinjan. Rest of squadron launches at 0930 for hump escort. Weather's clear, no enemy activity reported in 72 hours. Milk run. Jack suited up with the mechanical precision of 43 previous missions. Leather flight gloves worn soft at the palms. Mae West life vest that crackled when he moved. Parachute harness that clicked into place with 4 distinct snaps. Flight helmet that smelled like sweat and rubber. On the flight line, Technical Sergeant Frank Weber stood beside Jack's P-40. Weber was 34 years old, former Detroit auto mechanic, hands permanently stained with engine grease. He ran through the maintenance log like reciting scripture. Replaced hydraulic line to left main gear. Number 2 cylinder was leaking. Clean spark plugs on cylinders 3, 7, and 11. Topped off coolant reservoir. Your Allison runs hot in this climate. Ammunition load is 1,800 rounds 50 caliber across 6 guns. That's approximately 12 seconds of sustained fire, Lieutenant. Weber touched the number 44 painted on the fuselage. Dave Brennan's old number that Jack had requested after the crash. She ain't pretty, Lieutenant, but she's honest. Treat her right, she'll bring you home. 9:05 hours. Jack pushed the throttle forward. The Allison V1710 engine roared. 1,240 horsepower of liquid-cooled American engineering. Lady Luck rolled down the runway. Tail came up at 45 miles per hour, lifted off at 90. The stick vibrated in his hand, alive, responsive. The smell of hot engine oil mixed with high-altitude air. Below him, Dinjan Airfield spread across the valley. 14 C-47 Skytrains loaded with critical supplies. A field hospital treating 63 wounded soldiers. Fuel stocks for 11 days of hump operations. Everything looked normal. Routine patrol, home by 10:30 for bad coffee and paperwork. Then the horizon changed. 9:27 hours. Jack was 8,000 feet over the Assam Valley when he saw them. Dark specks against the morning haze. Like a swarm of insects 3 miles east, but these insects caught the sun on metal wings. 6 specks. 12. 24. More emerging from the haze, forming up into a pattern Jack recognized from intelligence briefings. Bomber formation, V's of 3 aircraft each. And above them, below them, layered like a wedding cake. Fighters, lots of fighters. Jack counted again, slower this time, wanting to be wrong. 6 bombers in the lead V. 6 more in the second. Another 6 in the third. 4 groups of 10 fighters positioned to protect them. 64 aircraft total. Heading directly toward Dinjan at 240 miles per hour. 8 minutes to target. Jack keyed his radio, forcing his voice steady. Command, this is Reaper 2-1. I have visual on large enemy formation bearing 090 distance 3 miles heading 270 toward Dinjan. Estimate 24 Ki-21 Sally bombers with approximately 40 Ki-43 Oscar fighters. Request immediate support. Static crackled. Then the response came. Reaper 2-1 confirmed count. 6-4 total aircraft, affirmative command. They're heading straight for us. ETA to target approximately 8 minutes. In the operations tent at Dinjan, the radio operator went white. Corporal Mickey Chen, 19 years old, from San Francisco. Major Hartley grabbed the handset. Understood, 2-1. Jorhat is scrambling reinforcements. ETA 38 minutes. Shadow the formation and report. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage until support arrives. Hartley turned to his operations officer. Get everyone to the shelters. Move the wounded from the field hospital first. We've got maybe 7 minutes before those bombs start falling. In his cockpit, 12,000 feet above the formation, Jack ran the numbers. Enemy speed 240 miles per hour. Distance to target 3 miles equals 8 minutes until bombing run. Friendly fighters from Jorhat 38 minutes away. Time difference 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, those 24 bombers, each carrying 2,200 pounds of high explosive ordnance, would turn Dinjan Airfield into a crater. The 14 C-47s would burn. The 63 wounded soldiers in the field hospital would die in their beds. 11 days of fuel reserves would cook off in explosions visible from Burma. And Jack Morrison would watch it happen from 12,000 feet, following orders, keeping himself safe. Standard fighter doctrine was clear. Never engage when outnumbered more than 5-1. Wait for reinforcements. Live to fight another day. Jack was outnumbered 64-1, but in his mind he heard Dave Brennan's voice from that sunset conversation 3 weeks ago. Don't wait for backup if people need help. Promise me you'll fight. Jack looked down at Dinjan. Through his canopy he could see tiny figures moving around the C-47s. Ground crews trying to start engines to get the transports airborne before the bombs fell. But C-47s took time to warm up, time to taxi, time they did not have. Jack reached into his jacket pocket, felt the 2 letters there. Eleanor asking him to come home, Mrs. Brennan asking if her son died afraid. He thought about Catherine, 2 years old, taking her first steps toward his photograph. Would she remember him if he did not come home? Or would he just be a photograph on the mantle, a flag in a box, a story her mother told about a father she never really knew? The rational choice was clear. One pilot could not stop 64 aircraft. Dying would not save Dinjan. It would just put his name on the casualty list alongside everyone else. But there was another option, a desperate, impossible option. Jack thought about those 63 wounded soldiers in the field hospital. Men who had already bled for this war. Men who deserved more than dying in their beds because one pilot followed orders and stayed safe. He keyed his radio. Command Reaper 2-1, I'm engaging. Negative 2-1, stand down. That's a direct order. Jack's hand moved to the radio dial, clicked it off. In the sudden silence of his cockpit, just the roar of the Allison engine and the whistle of wind through the wing struts, Jack Morrison pushed the throttle to full combat power and rolled his P-40 inverted. 64 Japanese aircraft below him. One American pilot above them. The odds were impossible. Jack Morrison did not care. Jack positioned Lady Luck 4,000 feet above the bomber stream sun behind him. The Oscars had not spotted him yet. Their attention focused forward on Dinjan 7 miles ahead now. He had one advantage. Surprise, the Japanese pilots expected fighters to meet them near the target, not 20 miles out. They were in formation flying. Tight, disciplined, but vulnerable. Jack's plan crystallized in seconds. Hit the lead bomber formation first. Ignore the fighters initially. They would take time to react. Break the bombers' discipline. Make them scatter. Force them to abort their run. He rolled inverted, pulled the nose down. The world rotated. Sky became ground became sky. Negative G-forces pressed him against his shoulder straps. His loose navigation charts lifted off the cockpit floor, floating. Airspeed built rapidly. 320 miles per hour. 340, 360. The Allison engine screamed at full power. Manifold pressure climbing to 54 inches, well beyond normal operating range. The airframe shuddered. Wing struts sang in the slipstream. Jack's gloved hands tightened on the control stick. Sweat trickled down his spine despite the freezing altitude. His breath fogged the inside of his oxygen mask. Range closed fast. 2,000 yards. 1,500, 1,000. The lead Sally bomber group flew in tight formation. 6 aircraft, 2 Vs of 3. Through his gun sight, Jack saw details. Rising sun insignia on wings. Glass nose section. Waist gunner positions. 800 yards. 700, 600. At 300 yards, Jack's thumb found the firing button on his control stick. Press down. 650 caliber Browning M2 machine guns hammered. The recoil shuddered through the entire aircraft. A violent vibration that rattled his teeth. Shell casings ejected into the slipstream, brass glinting in sunlight. Cordite smoke filled the cockpit. Sharp, acrid smell mixing with hot gun oil. Red tracers arced toward the lead bomber. Jack walked his rounds up the Sally's left wing. Fabric tore. Long gashes appearing in the control surfaces. Metal sparked where 50 caliber rounds punched through aluminum skin. The bomber's port engine erupted. Orange fireball bloomed from the Mitsubishi radial engine. Black smoke poured from the cowling, thick and oily. The bomber rolled left, losing altitude, crew, losing control. The formation broke. Bombers scattered left and right, their tight V dissolving into chaos. Number 2 and 3 bombers broke formation to avoid collision. The second V pulled up and away. Within 5 seconds, the entire lead formation was dispersed across 2 miles of sky. Jack had done it. 6 bombers scattered, their bombing accuracy destroyed. But he had also announced his presence to 40 Oscar fighters, and they were coming for him. Jack pulled up hard. 7 Gs crushed him into his seat. His vision grayed at the edges. blood draining from his head. He held back pressure on the stick until Lady Luck arced over the top of the climb, then rolled right. 40 Nakajima P-43 Oscar fighters dove toward him from above. The Oscars were faster in a turn, more maneuverable at low speed. Standard P-40 tactics said hit and run, never turn with them. But Jack could not run. If he extended away, the bombers would reform and complete their attack. He had to keep pressure on the formation. Keep them scattered, keep them nervous, even if it meant dogfighting 40 Oscars alone. Let me pause here to explain what Jack was facing, because understanding these aircraft makes what happens next even more impossible. The Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar was one of the most maneuverable fighters in the Pacific theater. Powered by a Nakajima HA-115 engine, producing 1,150 horsepower, it could reach 329 miles per hour at 13,000 feet. But speed was not its advantage. Agility was. The Oscar could execute turning circles tighter than any American fighter. Its butterfly combat flaps allowed it to bleed speed rapidly in turns without stalling. Japanese pilots exploited this ruthlessly. In the previous 6 months, Oscars had shot down 63 Allied fighters over Burma and Northeast India. Jack's P-40N Warhawk was faster in a straight line. The Allison V1710-81 engine generated 1,240 horsepower at 3,000 RPM, giving maximum speed of 378 miles per hour below 12,000 feet. But in a sustained turning fight, the heavier American fighter would lose energy faster than the lightweight Japanese aircraft. Standard P-40 tactics against Oscars were simple. Never turn with them. Use speed, hit and run, extend away, reset. Jack could not extend away. The bombers were 17 miles from Dinjan, still within range, still a threat. He had to violate every tactical rule he had been taught, and somehow survive. 4 Oscars came at Jack in a loose finger 4 formation from his 10 o'clock high. Jack saw them against the pale morning sky. 4 dark shapes growing larger wings reflecting sunlight. Range 800 yards. Closing speed 600 miles per hour combined. He rolled left, pulled the nose up, centered the lead Oscar in his gun sight, fired a 2-second burst. 6 streams of 50 caliber tracers converged but high. Rounds passed above the Oscar's canopy. The Japanese pilot broke right in a snap roll. His wingman followed both fighters, pulling away in a defensive split. Jack reversed hard, diving to maintain airspeed. 2 more Oscars dove from above. He had been so focused on the first pair that he had lost track of the second element. 7.7 millimeter Travers walked past his right wing. Jack saw them. Red streaks like angry hornets. 1 round sparked off his engine cowling. Another punched through his right wing fabric, leaving a fist-sized hole. He pulled into a climbing left turn, fired another burst at the diving Oscars. No hits. They broke away, circling to reset for another pass. Jack glanced at his ammunition counter. 1,600 rounds remaining across all 6 guns. At his current rate of fire, maybe 9 more attack sequences. Behind the fighter screen, the Sally bombers were attempting to reform. 3 groups of 6 aircraft, each closing back into formation. If they achieved their bombing Vs again, they would press the attack. Jack had perhaps 90 seconds before they reached release point over Dinjan. He shoved throttle to the stop, dove toward the bombers again. 8 Oscars followed him down. The P-40 accelerated in the dive. 405 miles per hour. The Oscars could not match that speed without overstressing their airframes. Jack opened the gap, pulled out at bomber altitude, lined up on the right-hand Sally formation. Range 300 yards. He fired. Tracers converged on the lead bomber's right engine. The Mitsubishi HA-101 radial engine exploded, fireball erupting from the cowling. The bomber rolled right, streaming fire and debris. Its wingman broke formation to avoid collision. Another bomber formation scattered. Jack checked his instruments between attacks. Fuel 162 gallons remaining. Ammunition 1,400 rounds. Coolant temperature 230 degrees Fahrenheit. That last number made his stomach drop. Normal operating temperature for the Allison V1710 was 210 degrees. At 250, the engine would begin to fail. His engine had been running at full combat power for 11 minutes. Manifold pressure above 50 inches, RPM at 3,000. The liquid-cooled engine was designed for approximately 20 minutes of sustained operation at those settings. He had 9 minutes left. Maybe. Three options presented themselves. One, reduced power to let the engine cool, but the bombers would reform and attack Dinjan. Two, return to base, abandon the mission. Call it a moral victory. He had scattered them once, but they would regroup. Three, continue fighting. Risk engine failure over hostile territory. Jack thought about the 63 wounded soldiers at Dinjan, men in hospital beds unable to run when the bombs started falling. He kept the throttle forward. Coolant temperature climbed. 235 degrees. Two Oscars attacked head-on. Closing speed exceeded 600 miles per hour. Both fighters opened fire at 500 yards. 7.7 millimeter tracers walking toward Jack's nose. Jack saw their muzzle flashes, felt the vibration of his own guns firing. 50 caliber rounds carried more energy, reached farther than the lighter Japanese guns. At 350 yards, his rounds hit the left Oscar's engine, cowling. The lightweight fighter shuddered, broke left, trailing white coolant vapor. Jack rolled right and dove. His coolant temperature hit 240 degrees. The Sally bombers were 15 miles from Dinjan, still within bombing range, still a threat, and Jack Morrison's engine was slowly cooking itself to death. Jack Morrison had scattered the enemy formation twice. He had damaged at least 3 aircraft. He had bought time for Dinjan to prepare. But now he faced a cascading series of mechanical failures that would push his damaged P-40 and his flying skills far beyond anything the aircraft designers ever imagined possible. What happened next would be studied in test pilot schools for the next 30 years, and attempted exactly 0 times by any pilot who valued his life. Coolant temperature, 248 degrees. Jack could feel the engine dying beneath him. Vibration through the control stick. Rough, uneven. Not the smooth roar of a healthy Allison, but something ragged, desperate. Like the engine itself knew it was being asked to do the impossible. At 250 degrees, detonation would start in the cylinders. Pre-ignition from excessive heat. Fuel exploding too early in the compression stroke. Pistons hammering against cylinder heads, pounding the engine apart from the inside. 2 degrees away from catastrophic failure. 6 Oscars were diving toward him. Jack saw them late, rolled left, too slow. 7.7 millimeter rounds punched through his right wing. Metal buckled. 3 holes in a diagonal line across the wing surface. 1 round hit his right aileron control rod. The aileron response went mushy. Jack needed more right stick pressure to maintain level flight. Had to physically push harder on the stick just to keep the wings level. Another burst walked up his fuselage. Rounds sparked off, engine cowling. Sharp metallic pings. One penetrated the coolant reservoir behind the firewall. Green coolant sprayed across Jack's windscreen. Thick glycol-based fluid that smeared across the glass, cutting visibility by half. The engine temperature gauge climbed past 260 degrees. Steam erupted from the cowling seams. White vapor pouring into the slipstream. Jack's oil pressure gauge dropped from 40 psi to 30, then 25, then 20. The Allison was dying. Jack chopped the throttle. Engine RPM fell from 3,000 to 2,400. Not enough power to maintain altitude. Lady Luck started descending, 1,000 feet per minute, then 1,500. The Oscars circled above, not attacking now, just watching, waiting for the American pilot to crash or bail out. And then Jack's engine caught fire. Fire in a liquid-cooled aircraft engine follows a predictable sequence. First, burning coolant vaporizes and ignites. Glycol-based coolant burns with an intense, invisible flame, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Second, flames spread forward along the engine cowling, drawn by airflow. The slipstream acts like a blowtorch, feeding oxygen to the fire. Third, if flames reach the fuel lines running along the engine's left side, the aircraft explodes. Time from ignition to explosion, approximately 45 seconds. Standard procedure for engine fires was immediate shutdown and bailout. But Jack's altitude was only 8,000 feet, descending rapidly. He was 12 miles from friendly territory over jungle where Japanese patrols operated. He kept the engine running. The Allison's fuel mixture could be leaned manually. Jack pulled the mixture control back to idle cutoff for 3 seconds, starving the engine of fuel. Fire intensity decreased, flames still visible from cowling seams but not spreading. He pushed the mixture forward again. The engine coughed, caught, continued running. Rough. Power output dropped to approximately 60%. Jack could feel heat through the firewall now. The aluminum floor beneath his boots was warm, almost hot. The smell changed. Burning oil, hot metal, that distinctive acrid scent of an engine eating itself. Sally bombers, 13 miles from Dinjan, heading southeast toward Burma. Individual bombers scattered. Formations broken. The raid was disrupted. Dinjan was safe. Jack turned southwest toward Shabua, 47 miles away. Approximately 16 minutes of flight time if the engine kept running. 6 Oscars followed him, and Jack Morrison's war was about to transition from tactical combat to a desperate fight for survival against his own crippled aircraft. At 7,000 feet, his engine oil pressure dropped to 0. The Allison ran on oil pressure to lubricate its connecting rods, crankshaft, and camshaft. Without oil pressure, metal ground against metal. Friction generated heat. Heat caused expansion. Components seized. Jack felt the engine vibration increase. The propeller began windmilling unevenly. Power output fell further. His airspeed dropped to 180 miles per hour. The P-40's stall speed was 120. He was losing the margin between controlled flight and falling. Behind him, the Oscars closed to 400 yards. They did not fire. They were watching, waiting for the engine to fail completely, waiting for him to bail out or crash. One Oscar pulled alongside close enough for Jack to see the pilot's face through the canopy. The Japanese pilot was young, maybe 20. He gestured downward. Land the aircraft. Surrender. Become a prisoner. Jack ignored him. Checked instruments. Altitude 7,000 feet. Airspeed 175 miles per hour. Oil pressure 0. Coolant temperature unmeasurable. The gauge had failed. Distance to Chabua 43 miles. Mathematically impossible. At 6,000 feet, smoke began filling Jack's cockpit. Not from the engine fire. This was different. Acrid chemical smoke from electrical wiring behind the instrument panel. The rounds that had hit his fuselage 3 minutes ago had severed control cables and damaged the electrical system. The smoke burned Jack's eyes, stinging tears that blurred his vision. It burned his throat. Each breath felt like swallowing broken glass. His lungs protested, triggering coughing fits that made flying nearly impossible. Jack slid the canopy open. Wind blast at 160 miles per hour cleared some smoke, but the slipstream made breathing difficult. Cold air shocked his lungs. His airspeed fell. 160 miles per hour. 150. 140. The P-40's stall speed was 120. The smoke was not just smoke. It was carbon monoxide from incomplete combustion in the damaged engine. Carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin in blood 200 times more readily than oxygen. It starves the brain of oxygen while giving no warning. No shortness of breath, no gasping, just shutdown. Symptoms Jack was experiencing: headache behind his eyes, throbbing and tense. Confusion thoughts becoming sluggish. Vision tunneling, gray edges closing in. Fine motor control, degrading hands trembling. Nausea rising in his stomach. In the smoke-filled cockpit, Jack saw movement in his peripheral vision. Turned his head. Dave Brennan sitting in the right seat. Not real. A hallucination. But Dave's voice clear in his mind. Keep flying, Jack. Don't quit on me now. Jack shook his head, focused on instruments. Distance to Chabua 43 miles. Approximately 14 minutes if he maintained current speed. His oil pressure gauge read 0. Engine should have seized by now. Connecting rods should have welded to the crankshaft. But the Allison kept running, somehow, on momentum in whatever microscopic oil film remained. 3 weeks ago, November 19, 1943, Jack and Dave flying combat air patrol over Lido Road when 8 Oscars bounced them from above. Dave called break. Both P-40s split. Oscars divided. 4 followed Jack, 4 pursued Dave. Jack used speed, extended away, came back around. By then, Dave was turning fight with 4 Oscars. Violation of every tactical principle. But Dave had seen convoy below. 40 trucks carrying ammunition for Chinese forces. If Oscars strafed convoy, entire shipment destroyed. So Dave turned with them, bleeding energy, trying to keep their attention. Jack dove to help, but too far away. Dave's P-40 took hits, engine caught fire, radio transmission broken by static. Jack canopy jammed. I can't, it's hot. Oh God, it's 40 seconds of screaming. then silence. Dave's P-40 hit jungle at 380 miles per hour, fireball visible for miles. Jack shot down 2 Oscars that day. Did not matter. Dave was gone. Present moment. Jack blinked smoke from eyes. He would not die like Dave. Would not burn. Would not scream. He would get home. Somehow. At 4,000 feet, Jack's right aileron control cable snapped completely. He felt it through the stick. Sudden loss of resistance on the right side. The cable that translated his stick inputs into aileron movement had severed probably at the connection point where the battle damage had weakened it. The right aileron flopped to full deflection, pushed there by aerodynamic forces with nothing to hold it neutral. Immediate effect. Lady Luck rolled right violently. Nose dropped into defties. Jack hauled back on control stick with both hands. Nothing. Elevator cables damaged. No pitch control. Nose stayed down. Airspeed increased. 200 miles per hour. 220. 250. Jungle rushed up. 3,000 feet. 2,500. 2,000. Jack's mind raced through options. Trim tabs. He cranked manual trim wheel forward. Normally adjusts horizontal stabilizer for hands-off flight. Slight nose-up tendency. Not enough. Rudder, he stomped left rudder pedal. Aircraft yawed left, but nose still down. Throttle, he chopped power completely. Engine windmilled. Nose drops faster. Altitude 1,800 feet. Airspeed 260 miles per hour. Rate of descent 3,500 feet per minute. Time to impact approximately 30 seconds. For 2 seconds, Jack Morrison accepted he was going to die. Not in combat, not protecting anyone, just crash. A mechanical failure killing him after he had survived 64 enemy aircraft. Then Dave's voice again. Think, Jack. There's always a way. And suddenly Jack remembered something from training. Something his instructor, Captain Harold Jensen, at Randolph Field, Texas, 1942, had mentioned in a boring afternoon lecture on unusual flight attitudes. Jensen had said, if your control surfaces are damaged and forcing aircraft into uncontrolled attitude, sometimes flying inverted reverses the forces. Aerodynamics work both directions. Every student had thought Jensen was crazy. Flying inverted was for air shows, not emergency procedures. But Jack was at 1,400 feet with 0 other options. His damaged right aileron was forcing right wing down. Broken elevator cables left horizontal stabilizer nose down. What if he rolled inverted damaged aileron would force right wing up instead of down? Elevator stuck nose down would push tail down, lifting nose up. Flying upside down would reverse the control inputs. At 1,200 feet above jungle, 43 miles from home, engine burning cockpit filled with smoke, Jack Morrison rolled Lady Luck completely inverted. -1G pressed Jack against his shoulder straps. Blood rushed to his head. Instant pressure behind his eyes like someone inflating a balloon inside his skull. His face felt hot, swollen. Vision turned red around the edges. Literally red blood vessels in his eyes engorged. Loose items in cockpit fell upward. Pencils, navigation charts, an empty cigarette pack. They hit the canopy above him. Or below him, direction lost meaning. The Allison's fuel system was designed for positive G-loads. Inverted, the fuel pickups in the tank struggled. Engine coughed, sputtered, nearly quit. Jack's heart stopped. Then the engine caught again. Running rough, backfiring, but producing power. The nose came up. Descent slowed. At 1,100 feet, Lady Luck leveled out, flying upside down at 140 miles per hour. Jack held inverted attitude for 40 seconds. His airspeed increased to 160. Altitude climbing at 50 feet per minute. 50 feet per minute was not much, but it was up. He was gaining altitude while flying upside down with a burning engine. Then fuel starvation returned. Engine cutting out. Missing coughing. He had to roll right side up to let fuel feed properly. Jack rolled upright. Immediately damaged controls, pushed nose down. Lady Luck descended. 600 feet per minute. He waited until losing 300 feet. Rolled inverted again. Nose came up. Climbed 200 feet before fuel starvation forced him upright. The pattern crystallized. Upside down to climb. Damaged controls work in reverse. Right side up to let fuel feed properly. Flip, climb, flip, descend, flip, climb. On the ground below, the British tea plantation manager named Edward Williams stood in his garden with binoculars watching a P-40 fighter perform what appeared to be aerobatics. Except the aircraft was trailing smoke, and the maneuvers looked wrong. Desperate, Williams watched the P-40 roll inverted climb, briefly roll upright, descend, then repeat the pattern. He turned to his foreman. That pilot's either showing off or he's in serious trouble. I can't tell which. The foreman, an Indian Army veteran. Sir, that's trouble. Look at the smoke. He's flying wounded. Williams lowered his binoculars. Then God help him, because I don't think anyone else can. Inside the cockpit, Jack was losing the fight against carbon monoxide poisoning. Each inverted segment 20 seconds hanging upside down further confused his vestibular system. Up and down lost meaning. His inner ear screamed contradictory signals to his brain. Carbon monoxide levels building in his blood, 15%, 20%, 25% carboxyhemoglobin saturation, normal less than 3%, toxic above 10%, potentially fatal above 30%. Jack was at 25 and climbing. He counted to maintain focus. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi during each inverted segment. When he reached 20, must roll upright or pass out. Twice he lost count. Stayed inverted too long. Vision went completely red. He forced the roll through muscle memory, nearly blacked out during transition. Distance to WWII, 21 miles. Time required at 160 miles per hour, 8 minutes. Number of flip cycles needed approximately 11. He had completed 3 cycles. 8 to go. 8 more opportunities to lose consciousness, crash inverted, or simply run out of time before his brain shut down completely. At WWII Airfield, Technical Sergeant Frank Weber stood on the tarmac with binoculars scanning the eastern sky. Word had reached WWII 30 minutes ago. Morrison engaged 64 Japanese aircraft alone over Dinjan. Every ground crew member knew what that meant. Suicide mission. Hero's death. Body recovery operation. Weber watched the sky, hoping to see Lady Luck appear, knowing he probably would not. Then movement. Low on the horizon. Aircraft approaching from the east. Trailing smoke. Weber raised binoculars, squinted through the lenses. What he saw made no sense. A P-40 had to be Morrison's. Nobody else was up, was flying toward the field inverted. Landing gear extended, then rolling upright, then inverted again. Private Danny Chen, 19 years old, stood beside Weber. Sarge is Morrison doing barrel rolls. Weber kept binoculars pressed to his eyes. No, his controls are damaged. He's flying inverted because that's the only way he can climb. Other crew members gathered. Someone pointed. He's not gonna make it. Look at that smoke. Weber did quick math in his head. Morrison's altitude, approximately 3,000 feet. Distance to field 7 miles. Rate of descent during upright segments, 600 feet per minute. Rate of climb during inverted segments, 50 feet per minute, Weber said quietly. He'll lose about 1,000 feet before he reaches the field. That puts him at 2,000 feet for landing pattern. That might be enough, Chen spoke. If his engine doesn't quit. Weber nodded. Yeah, if his engine doesn't quit. They watched in silence as the damaged P-40 continued its oscillating approach. Flip, climb, flip, descend, each cycle bringing Morrison closer to either salvation or disaster. Weber muttered under his breath, "Come on, Morrison, bring her home. Bring her home." At 2 miles from WWII runway, Jack Morrison's engine quit. No warning, no gradual power loss. Just silence. The Allison's roar companion for the last 19 minutes suddenly gone, replaced by wind noise. The whistle of air through bullet holes in the wings, the creak of damaged airframe, propeller windmilled to a stop, 3 blades visible through the windscreen motionless. No power, no thrust. Lady Luck became a glider. Very poor glider. P-40 Warhawk glide ratio approximately 8 to 1. From 2,000 feet, altitude could glide approximately 3 miles in still air. Runway was 2 miles away. Theoretically possible, but theoretical glide ratios assumed undamaged aircraft. Jack's Lady Luck had 16 bullet holes creating drag. Landing gear extended, never retracted after battle. Damaged control surfaces disrupting airflow. 1 aileron flopping freely. Actual glide ratio maybe 6 to 1. Maybe worse. Jack ran the numbers in his carbon monoxide poisoned brain. Altitude 2,000 feet. Distance 2 miles equals 10,560 feet. Glide ratio 6 to 1 equals 12,000 feet of glide range. He would make it. Barely. But his actual glide ratio might be 5 to 1. That's only 10,000 feet of range. 560 feet short. And he was flying inverted half the time, which worsened everything. After surviving 64 enemy aircraft, after flying inverted for 11 minutes, after nursing a dying engine for 17 miles, Jack Morrison was going to crash 200 yards from safety because his engine quit at the worst possible moment, unless he could think of one more impossible solution. Jack remembered more from Captain Jensen's training lecture. Jensen had explained, inverted glide is counterintuitive. Normal glide aircraft descends nose first. Gravity pulls down, wings generate lift opposing gravity. Inverted wing camber designed to generate lift upward instead generates downward force. However, at specific angles of attack, this reversal creates less drag than right side up flight. Inverted glide can theoretically extend range. Jensen had shown calculations. Wind tunnel data. Nobody paid attention because who would actually try this? Jack Morrison had nothing left to lose. At 1,800 feet 1 mile from runway, Jack rolled inverted. Blood rushed to head, more painful now after 20 minutes of cumulative stress. Vision redded immediately. Nausea surged. His hands trembled on the stick. But he held the inverted attitude. Watched jungle pass beneath him, or above him. Airspeed 125 miles per hour. Just above stall. Descent rate 500 feet per minute. Right side up, his descent rate had been 700 feet per minute. Inverted was actually more efficient. From 1,800 feet at 500 feet per minute, 3.6 minutes of glide time. At 125 miles per hour, approximately 7 miles of range. The runway was 1 mile away. He would make it if he could stay conscious, if he could roll upright at the right moment, if the damage controls did not kill him during the transition, if ground crew did not shoot him down. Because Weber's ground crew at Chabua, seeing an inverted P-40 with gear down trailing smoke, were about to make the same assumption that almost killed Jack 3 minutes ago. Enemy aircraft attempting to strafe the field. And Master Sergeant Paul Richards was already training a .50 caliber machine gun on the approaching target. Master Sergeant Paul Richards had his finger on the trigger of the Browning M2 .50 caliber machine gun. Through the gun's ring sight, Richards tracked the inverted P-40, 400 feet altitude, half mile from runway threshold. Smoke pouring from engine. Landing gear extended. Wrong configuration for inverted flight. Richards to his loader corporal, James Murphy. "What the hell is that pilot doing?" Murphy spoke. "Don't know, Sarge, but it ain't normal." Standard protocol was clear. Unknown aircraft approaching an attack configuration equals shoot first, identify later, especially in combat zone, especially after reports of Japanese raid this morning. Richards began taking slack out of trigger. 2 pounds of pressure, then 3. 300 yards away, Frank Weber was sprinting toward the gun position. His boots pounded concrete, breath coming in gasps, voice hoarse from shouting. "Richards, stand down. Don't shoot," but Richards could not hear him over the wind in his own focus. P-40 at 300 feet, quarter mile from threshold. Richards tracking the target smoothly, leading it slightly for deflection. Weber ran harder, lungs burning, 200 yards to gun position. Richards squinted through sight, P-40 close enough now to see details. Number on fuselage, 44. That was Morrison's number. Lady Luck. But aircraft was inverted. Japanese pilots sometimes flew captured American aircraft. Could be enemy. Weber reached gun position. Shoved barrel down, physically. "That's... Morrison, don't shoot." Richards stepped back, finger off trigger. "But Sarge, it's inverted with gear down." "That don't make sense." Weber gripped his arm. "Nothing about today makes sense. His controls are damaged. He's flying inverted because he has to. P-40 at 200 feet, 300 yards from threshold." Richards lowered the gun completely. "Jesus. Sorry, Sarge. I almost..." Weber cut him off. "Doesn't matter. Get medical crew ready. He's gonna need immediate assistance." Jack Morrison was at 200 feet altitude, 300 yards from runway threshold, hanging upside down with consciousness fading. He had been inverted for 63 seconds, 20 seconds beyond his safe limit. Vision completely red. Vestibular system screaming. Brain oxygen starved from carbon monoxide and inverted blood flow. He had perhaps 15 seconds of consciousness remaining. Must roll upright now to line up with runway. But if he rolled too soon, damage controls would push nose down, crash short. If he waited too long, he would overshoot centerline or pass out mid-roll. 200 feet altitude, 300 yards from threshold, airspeed 125 miles per hour, time to threshold 5 seconds. Jack shoved stick right, Lady Luck rolled, world rotated, sky and ground exchanging places. Negative G transitioned through 0 G. Moment of weightlessness, a stomach floating. Then positive G slammed him back into seat. 2 Gs, 3 Gs pressing him down. Damaged right aileron immediately pushed right wing down. Jack countered with full left stick, fighting the aircraft muscles straining against the control forces. Wings wobbled, oscillating left-right, but mostly level. Nose wanted to drop. Broken elevator cables gave him partial control. Not much, just enough. He pulled back on stick with both hands. Nose came up barely. Lady Luck descended toward runway at steep angle. Nose-high wings, unstable airspeed bleeding. Through smoke-streaked windscreen, Jack saw runway threshold approaching. Tower to his left, revetments to his right, people on tarmac watching. He was lined up, mostly. Jack crossed threshold at 90 feet. Too high, too fast. No way to adjust. No flaps to slow down. No engine power to go around. Damage controls barely responding. He was committed to landing. Now, on this approach, with whatever control authority he had left. Lady Luck dropped toward concrete like a wounded bird, nose high, wings wobbling, smoke trailing. Every person on Shibuya Airfield held their breath. This was going to be bad. Lady Luck dropped the last 90 feet in 4 seconds. Main wheels hit concrete hard. 7G impact. Gear struts compressed fully. Metal shrieking. The whole aircraft bounced, literally left the runway for half a second, then slammed down again. Tail wheel hit. Another metal shriek. Jack's teeth clacked together. Helmet banged against canopy frame. Right main gear weakened by bullet damage, overstressed by inverted flight. Shock loaded beyond design limits collapsed. Loud crack of metal fracturing. Right wing dropped. Wingtip hit runway. Scraped along concrete, throwing sparks. Bright orange against gray runway. Aircraft spun right. Ground looped. Rotating 180 degrees. Tail swapping ends with nose. Metal screaming on concrete. Sparks showering. Broken aluminum trailing behind like shrapnel. Smell of burning rubber from tires disintegrating. Lady Luck skidded backward 200 feet, trailing debris field of torn metal, shattered landing light lenses, pieces of cowling. The aircraft stopped, resting on collapsed right gear, tail wheel, and left main. Tilted at 20-degree angle. Smoke billowing from engine compartment. Silence, except for wind whistling through bullet holes. Hiss of escaping coolant. Tick, tick, tick of hot metal cooling. Distant shouts of fire crews running toward crash site. In the cockpit, Jack Morrison sat motionless, hands still on stick and throttle, eyes closed, unconscious or dead. From the ground, nobody could tell. Fire truck reached Lady Luck in 14 seconds. 4 crew members jumped off before truck fully stopped. Crew Chief Staff Sergeant William Hayes pointed. Foam the engine, check for fuel leak. 2 firefighters aimed foam nozzles at smoking engine compartment. White chemical foam sprayed, covering hot metal, suppressing potential fire. Hayes climbed onto left wing, the only side accessible with right wing down. Reached cockpit, looked inside. Jack Morrison slumped in harness, face pale, lips slightly blue, not moving. Hayes to his crew. Get medical up here. Now Frank Weber reached aircraft, pushed through firefighters, climbed up beside Hayes. Weber spoke. Is he? Hayes answered. He's breathing. Barely. Help me get him out. They released Jack's shoulder harness. 4-point connection clicked open. Jack's body sagged forward. Weber caught him, supported his weight. Hayes warned. Easy. Watch his neck. Could have spinal injury from that landing. They lifted Jack out of cockpit, passed him down to medics waiting below. Medical crew laid Jack on stretcher. Flight surgeon, Captain Robert Hayes, no relation to fire crew chief, checked vitals. Pulse week 3, 140 beats per minute. Breathing shallow rapid. Skin pallor clammy. Pupils responsive but sluggish. Level of consciousness unconscious, responds to painful stimulus. Captain Hayes to medics. Carbon monoxide poisoning severe. Get him on 100% oxygen immediately. I want blood gas analysis, ECG, and IV fluids running before we move him. They placed oxygen mask over Jack's face, started IV line in his left arm, loaded stretcher onto ambulance. As they lifted stretcher, Jack's eyes fluttered open, grabbed Captain Hayes' arm with surprising strength. Is Dinjan okay? Hayes spoke gently. The base is safe, Lieutenant. You saved it. Now let us save you. Jack's eyes closed again. Hand went limp, ambulance doors closed. Drove toward field hospital. Frank Weber walked around Lady Luck with clipboard documenting damage. Battle damage. 16 bullet holes in fuselage 7.7 millimeter. 7 holes in right wing, 4 holes in left wing, 3 holes in engine cowling, 1 penetrated oil cooler, control system damage, right aileron control cable severed at wing root connection, elevator cables damaged 40% functionality remaining, rudder cables intact but strained, landing gear, right main gear collapsed completely, left main gear intact but bent strut, tail wheel functional but damaged tire. Weber and Crew Chief Richards opened engine cowling with tools. What they found inside made Weber whistle low. Richards spoke. Jesus Christ. How is this thing still running? Allison V1710-81 engine status. All 12 cylinders showed severe scoring metal gouges from overheating. 3 connecting rods welded to crankshaft seized from oil starvation. Crankshaft warped from thermal stress. Coolant system destroyed, reservoir empty lines ruptured. Oil pan cracked, oil everywhere. 2 exhaust manifolds cracked from heat cycling. Weber spoke quietly. This engine should have seized 15 minutes ago. The fact it kept running, Richards finished. That ain't engineering, that's luck. Or something else. Weber touched the number 44 on fuselage. Maybe Dave Brennan's looking out for his friend. Weber wrote in maintenance log. Aircraft 44-1237 P-40N. Lady Luck total loss. Recommend salvage for parts. Pilot brought her home, but she'll never fly again. He closed the log, looked at the wrecked fighter. Bullet holes, collapsed, gear burned engine. Lady Luck had one more mission. She had completed it, and like Jack Morrison, she had refused to quit until she was home. Before we get to what happened after Jack recovered, before we talk about the Silver Star ceremony and his continued service, let me pause here. Because this moment, Jack Morrison, unconscious in a field hospital, his aircraft destroyed, but mission accomplished, represents something that resonates with everyone watching this. It's not about being a hero. Jack did not think of himself as a hero. He thought of himself as a guy who had a job to do and refused to quit until it was done. If you're from the generation that fought World War II or Korea or Vietnam, or if you're from any generation that understands that some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible, this story is for you. Hit that like button if you believe that what Jack Morrison did that day represents the best of what Americans can be when we're tested. Drop a comment telling us, did anyone in your family serve in the CBI theater? Did you ever hear stories about P-40 pilots in India or China? The comment section has become an incredible archive. And subscribe because stories like Jack Morrison's deserve to be remembered. These men did not fight for fame. They fought because people needed them. And then they came home and rarely talked about it. But we need to talk about it. We need to remember. Now let's get to what happened after December 13th, 1943. Because Jack Morrison's story does not end with that crash landing. It's just getting started. December 16th, 1943. Field Hospital, Chabua. Jack Morrison woke up to white ceiling, white walls, smell of antiseptic and ether. Crisp sheets, scratchy against skin. IV needle ache in left arm. Oxygen mask on face. Cool, dry air hissing. Headache behind eyes, dull, persistent. A voice beside him. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Jack turned his head. Movement sent spike of pain through neck muscles. Captain Hayes, the flight surgeon, sat in chair beside bed with clipboard. Hayes spoke. You've been unconscious for 57 hours. Carbon monoxide poisoning severe. Your carboxyhemoglobin level when you landed was 28%. Anything above 20 typically causes death. You should be dead. Jack's voice came out raspy. How How long before I can fly? Hayes actually laughed. Most pilots would ask how long until they can go home. You want to know when you can fly again. He consulted chart. 7 days medical leave, then full evaluation. If you pass, and that's a big if, you'll be cleared for flight status, Jack asked. Dinjan Hayes answered. All 14 C-47s intact. All 63 patients in field hospital survived. Fuel depot undamaged. The Japanese raid was completely disrupted. Intelligence confirms all 24 bombers turned back without dropping ordnance. 0 bombs hit Allied facilities. 0 casualties on the ground. Jack closed his eyes. Mission accomplished. Dave would have been proud. Hayes continued. One more thing. General Stilwell wants to see you when you are mobile. Something about a decoration ceremony. Jack spoke. I just did my job. Hayes shook his head. Lieutenant, what you did goes so far beyond just your job that nobody here can quite believe it actually happened. December 18th. Intelligence Office. Major Thomas Bradford, 10th Air Force Intelligence Officer, interviewed Jack for the official record. Session lasted 2 hours. Bradford began. Lieutenant Morrison, describe your attack sequence. Jack's voice still hoarse, hands showing slight tremor. At 0927 hours, I observed formation of approximately 64 Japanese aircraft, 24 Ki-21 bombers with approximately 40 Ki-43 fighters escort, heading toward Dinjan. I engaged from superior altitude using diving attacks to disrupt bomber formations. Jack described attack vectors, gunnery solutions, enemy fighter tactics, engine failure progression, control system damage, the inverted flying technique. Bradford took notes. This inverted flight technique, you learned this in training. Jack answered. Sort of. Instructor mentioned it once. Theoretical application. Nobody thought it was practical. Bradford nodded. Well, it's practical now. We'll be updating training manuals. Captain Hayes entered with blood analysis results. Major, you need to see this. Lieutenant Morrison's carbon monoxide levels, 72 hours post-incident, are still elevated. His carboxyhemoglobin at time of landing estimated between 28 and 30%. Bradford asked. And the significance, Hayes explained. At that level of poisoning, he should have been unconscious, certainly unable to perform complex motor tasks like flying an aircraft. The fact he remained functional for approximately 11 minutes in this state represents extraordinary willpower, overriding physiological limits. Bradford wrote in his report, Lieutenant Morrison's actions on December 13, 1943, represent one of the most remarkable displays of courage, skill, and determination witnessed in this theater. His tactical decision to engage overwhelming enemy forces while technically violation of standing orders resulted in complete disruption of enemy raid and preservation of critical Allied assets. Recommend immediate recognition. December 20th. Jack sat in hospital day room with writing paper. My dearest Eleanor, I'm sorry I haven't written in 3 weeks. I was in medical care after a difficult mission. I'm fine now. Some smoke inhalation and minor injuries, but healing well. I can't tell you operational details, but I want you to know that everything I did thinking of you and Catherine. I fought to come home to you both, and I will keep fighting until this war ends and I can hold you again. Tell Catherine that Daddy loves her and thinks about her every single day. Tell her I'll be home to see her walk and run and grow up. That's a promise I intend to keep. I know you asked me to just come home, not as a hero, just come home. I'm trying, Eleanor. I'm trying. Well, my love, Jack. Jack started second letter, the one he had been avoiding for 3 weeks. Dear Mrs. Brennan, you asked me what happened to Dave. You deserve the truth. On November 19th, Dave and I were attacked by Japanese fighters while protecting a supply convoy. Dave chose to engage them alone to protect the convoy. His aircraft was hit and caught fire. Your son died protecting others, Mrs. Brennan. The convoy he saved carried medical supplies and ammunition that reached hundreds of soldiers. Because of Dave's sacrifice, those men received treatment and equipment they needed to survive. Dave was my best friend. Before he died, he made me promise something. Don't wait for backup if people need help. Fight for them. 2 weeks ago, when I faced impossible odds, I remembered Dave's promise. I did what he would have done. I fought for others because Dave taught me that's what matters. Your son was a hero, Mrs. Brennan. Not because he died, but because he chose to fight when others needed him. Dave's courage lives on in every pilot who remembers his example. He did not die alone or afraid. He died doing what he believed was right, and I will carry his memory with me for the rest of my life. With deepest respect and sympathy, First Lieutenant Jack Morrison. Jack folded the letter, addressed envelope, placed it in outgoing mail. For the first time in 3 weeks, Jack slept without nightmares. January 8, 1944. Formation Ceremony, Chibua Airfield. Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell, Commander U.S. Forces China, Burma India Theater arrived for decoration ceremony. Boots crunching on gravel. Officers calling unit to attention. Snap of salutes. Wind flapping unit flag. Winter sun bright on assembled troops. 89th Fighter Squadron stood at attention. Jack Morrison front and center, still showing effects of his ordeal. Slight tremor in hands, dark circles under eyes from persistent insomnia, but standing straight. Still well-read citation in parade ground voice. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Silver Star Medal to First Lieutenant Jack Morrison, United States Army Air Forces, for gallantry in action against enemy forces on December 13, 1943. When Lieutenant Morrison, flying alone, encountered formation of 64 enemy aircraft attacking Allied installations, he engaged immediately despite overwhelming odds. Through exceptional flying skill and unwavering determination, he disrupted enemy bombing attack, preventing destruction of critical supply facilities and saving numerous Allied lives. Despite severe aircraft damage and personal injury, Lieutenant Morrison continued attack until enemy formation dispersed, then successfully returned, crippled aircraft to base through unconventional aeronautical techniques never before attempted. Lieutenant Morrison's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Army Air Forces. Stilwell pinned Silver Star on Jack's chest, shook his hand. Stilwell spoke quietly so only Jack could hear. "Son, what you did was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Probably both. Don't ever do it again," Jack answered. "Yes, sir." Stilwell continued. "That said, we need more pilots with your attitude. You're promoted to first lieutenant, effective immediately. Your choice of assignments." Jack spoke without hesitation. "I'd like to stay with 89th Squadron, sir. Finish what I started." Stilwell nodded. "You've earned that right. Dismissed." As formation broke up, pilots surrounded Jack. Handshakes, backslaps, genuine respect from men who understood exactly what he had done and how close he had come to dying. Weber pushed through crowd, handed Jack something wrapped in oilcloth. "Found this in Lady Luck before we scrapped her." Jack unwrapped it. Number 44 painted on a piece of aluminum cowling. Dave Brennan's number. Weber spoke. "Thought you'd want to keep it." Jack could not speak, just nodded. Jack Morrison flew 95 more combat missions with 89th Squadron. March 1944. Achieved ace status. 5 confirmed kills during bomber escort mission over Myitkyina, Burma. April through June. Flew close air support for Merrill's Marauders during their advance through northern Burma. July 23, 1944. Jack's final combat mission. Protecting transport aircraft over northern Burma when 8 Ki-43 Oscars attacked. Jack shot down 2 Oscars in 4 minutes. Both kills confirmed by ground observers. Formation scattered. Transports reached destination safely. September 1944. Jack received rotation orders. Tour complete. Going home. At the flight line, Berger helped him pack. "You did good, Lieutenant. Dave would be proud." Jack spoke. "I kept my promise to him. That's all that matters." Late September, San Antonio, Texas. Train station. Eleanor Morrison stood on platform with 2-year-old Catherine. When Jack stepped off train in dress uniform with Silver Star ribbon, Catherine did not recognize him. Hid behind her mother's skirt. Jack knelt down. Catherine peeked out. He opened his arms. After 5 seconds, the longest 5 seconds of Jack's life, Catherine ran to him. He caught her, held her, finally home. Jack Morrison remained in Army Air Forces. Later United States Air Force, 1945-50. Test pilot Wright Patterson, Air Force Base, Ohio. Helped develop emergency procedures for control system failures. 1950-53. Korea War. Flew F-86 Sabres, 23 combat missions, 1953 to 60. Squadron commander, various fighter wings, 1960 to 65. Staff officer, Pentagon, 1965 to 68. Wing commander, Vietnam, 1968 to 71. Training command, October 1971. Retired as full colonel after 30 years service. Jack's inverted flight technique, documented in Classified Air Force Technical Report, 1944. Reports circulated among test pilot schools. Technique officially designated inverted compensatory flight in 1947 manual update. Taught as emergency procedure for control system failures. Captain Harold Jensen, the instructor whose theoretical lecture saved Jack's life, received commendation for comprehensive training program. 89th Fighter Squadron. The Burma Banshees continued operations until August 1945. 413 Japanese aircraft destroyed in aerial combat. 147 destroyed on ground. 63 pilots killed or missing. Their deaths' head skull insignia became one of most recognized markings in CBI theater. 1978, 35 years after December 13, 1943. International Aviation History Conference, Washington, D.C. Retired Colonel Jack Morrison, 58 years old, delivered lecture on CBI air operations. After presentation, elderly Japanese gentleman approached. Colonel Morrison, I am Takeshi Yamamoto. December 13, 1943. I was flight leader of Oscars that followed you home. Jack stared. You let me go. You broke off pursuit. Yamamoto bowed slightly. I chose honor over orders that day. You fought with samurai spirit. I could not kill warrior who had earned his life through courage. They spoke for hour. Two warriors from opposite sides. Mutual respect bridging decades and former enmity. Yamamoto gave Jack his wartime diary. Pages describing December 13th mission. Jack gave Yamamoto photograph of Lady Luck number 44. They shook hands. Veterans of war, now friends in peace. One pilot, one obsolete fighter, 64 enemy aircraft. December 13th, 1943. Jack Morrison proved impossible odds mean nothing when someone refuses to quit. His solution to damage controls flying alternately inverted and upright for 11 minutes defied every standard procedure. But more importantly, Jack proved courage is not absence of fear. It's fighting despite fear because others depend on you. That's legacy of Burma Banshees, and the day one P-40 pilot disrupted entire Japanese raid. If you believe these stories of courage and determination need to be preserved and shared, hit that like button one more time. Subscribe so you never miss these forgotten heroes. And drop a comment about which untold story from World War II you'd like to hear next. Thanks for watching. And remember, ordinary people doing extraordinary things when it matters most. That's what makes history worth remembering.